In this episode, we react to claims made in a recent congressional hearing that multiple countries, including the US, are leveraging alien technology as part of a decades-long secret arms race. And later on, we'll weigh in on LL Cool J's recent claim that he, not Tupac or Jay-Z or Notorious Big or Lil Wayne, is the most important rapper of all time. Hello, welcome to the Call Like I See It podcast. I'm James Keys, and joining me today is a man whose deep voice, when turned up in a car, is known to rattle some trunks. Tunde Ogunlana. Tunde, you ready to show off that booming system today?
Yes, sir.
All right.
I'll just leave it at that.
Now, before we get started, if you enjoy the show,
I should have inhaled a helium balloon. Actually, for that, I just realized.
For that opening,
that intro. So go ahead.
Well, if you enjoy the show, we ask that you subscribe and hit like on YouTube or your podcast platform because that really helps the show out. Now, recording on December 3rd, 2024, and last month there was a congressional hearing that got into unidentified anomalous phenomena, or UAPs. And it was alleged that there's a program to gather information and retrieve evidence relating to alien technology, and it's called the Immaculate Constellation Program. And this program allegedly has been operating, for a long time without congressional oversight, and it's withholding lots of juicy images and data about UAP sightings. And most shockingly, at least, in my view, was that through this program, or as a part of this program and others, the U.S. is in possession of UAP tech and involved with that tech, trying to reverse engineer it and stuff, involved in a secret arms race with other countries, involving how we can deploy that stuff, for arms and so forth. So, Tunde, just to jump right in, what are your thoughts on this claim, of the idea of this Immaculate Constellation Program, and then also the claim of a secret arms race?
I think I'll be serious first, and then I'll have a joke. Because I want to answer the question seriously. I mean, I don't believe this, so I'll just kind of say it from that standpoint. I don't disbelieve that there could be other life besides what's on planet Earth in the universe. I may even be open to believing that there's intelligent enough life with enough of, whatever equivalent type of technologies they have that could even visit Earth. Whether now or whether a billion years ago, because obviously time is illmatic, right? If you want to go talk about old hip hop sayings. But the thing is that I just find this kind of fantastical that to believe that, this is kind of stories we've heard for decades, since I remember since I was a kid in the 80s, these ideas that, Area 51 and they're hiding, this alien technology and all this stuff. And there just doesn't seem to be any evidence for it. So, and this hearing, I know we'll get into it, but there was no evidence provided. That stuck out to me a lot. So that's my serious response. My kind of joke response is, this is what happens when a Congress of the United States is populated with enough people, maybe not a majority, but a high enough percentage of people that really believe in conspiracy theories, genuinely, like QAnon conspiracy theories, and, who have a population in our country and enough people that are susceptible to this kind of manipulation of information, because what I want to get into later in the conversation about what I really think this is a psychological operation. Through things like Ancient Aliens, shows like that. And, there's enough curiosity about these things that this Congress, one of its last endeavors in its 2-year tenure is going to be to spend time bringing this stuff to the American people, which I'm not really sure what the whole point is. And that's why I'll share my theories on that as we get into the conversation.
It's about wasteful government spending, right?
Oh yeah, I forgot. Sorry.
Yeah. That's. But no, I'll start with being a little more silly. Like, to me, this sounds like the plot of a Marvel movie. Like that to me, what it tracks very neatly. Yeah, it tracks very neatly with the way that our science fiction is presented to us, or Independence Day. It almost kind of is exact. Like you wonder if these guys maybe the guys giving this testimony maybe watched that movie too many times and then slept enough, and, enough dreams and all this stuff, and then started thinking that the plot of the movie was like real life, and they actually lived it, which actually is a thing. Like you can immerse yourself in something so much that you can actually fabricate memories and so forth. I'm not, I'll put it like this. I'm a skeptic. I could be I think that there's the universe is so vast. And as you said, time, there's been so much time, that at least we're aware of, in our perception of the universe, that I'm sure, things that are unexplainable to us or that are alien to us have gone on in the universe. But for the same reason of it being so vast and there being so much time, the time span being so large, like human beings have only been around, particularly in our current form, where we actually have technology. I should say that differently. Human beings with our current form, with like radio technology and stuff like that, where we can send signals and stuff like that, that's been like 100 years, 150 years. So of all the billions of years that the universe has been around, we're looking at this really tiny window of time, and then we're looking at this super small area of space. And so to think that for sure things have been going on in the universe, but to think that it's going to line up with us from a time standpoint and a location standpoint is kind of like the whole thing. That's like the thinking of, like the world's going to end when I'm alive, like type of thing. Like that's kind of that centering yourself on the of everything that's happening in the world, or in this case, the universe. And so I just would need, I say I'm a skeptic, like I'm not a believer sight unseen. I would just need to see more, and I think your point, like, I don't think it's a problem to believe in conspiracy theories that evidence is presented on, but more so like what we've seen with the Congress is that there's like an inclination or a desire to seek out more fantastical explanations for things. It's not that you come at it from a discriminating mindset and say, okay, well, I'm willing to listen to you, but you got to show me something. It can't just be, like giving me some plot of a sci-fi or summer blockbuster movie, but you have to actually show me something that supports that, versus, oh no, we can just make these claims and then they get picked up and so forth. I think it's interesting that you brought up that this is like a psyop, because I know when we talked offline, and I guess I'll set you back up with this, what was very interesting to me when you talked about how when these kind of reports would happen, we know this because of declassified intelligence reports, when public would start talking about seeing UFOs and things like that, go back 60, 70 years, that the U.S. military would lean into that and say, or would not discourage it, because it was helpful to divert people's attention away from what they were actually doing. And so like if people are running around chasing UFOs, then all this new tech that they're working on, that they're testing and stuff like that people are like, won't make that connection, and they'll be doing other stuff. And so I thought that was a really good point, and how like this type of information, we just did Nexus a couple weeks ago, and how information serves purposes other than conveying truth. What the real question is, why this information is out there, particularly when the Pentagon, another point you made, which I want to set you up with, is that the Pentagon is very tight-lipped about stuff like, this is what they allow people to get out and testify about now. Like if this was this is real, I'm sure this would be classified, but nonetheless,
I just wrote down that kid. I don't even gonna waste time right now looking up the name for the purpose of not wasting the audience time on the show for that. But there's a kid that recently was, he was arrested a while ago, but I think he was finally sent to jail from the Coast Guard. Sorry, not Coast Guard, the National Guard. He was where he served, and it was because he leaked some kind of classified information on Ukraine, whatever, was going on back when the war was starting. And, we have the famous case of like the Bradley or Chelsea Manning who leaked stuff during the Obama administration. And, people go to jail for this stuff, right? It was we had a whole issue when President Trump took documents to his house that apparently contained nuclear secrets and where submarines are and all that
classified information.
That's what I'm saying. And that was a big deal. And that's what point. Like,
and the kid's name, by the way, was Jack Teixeira, and he was recently sentenced in November.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And
for leaking secret Pentagon documents.
Correct. And it seems like whatever he was leaking that was secret about Ukraine, I think that would be dwarfed in comparison to if we really had information about the government secretly hiding outer space aliens. Like, literally, like that's what I mean. Like, no one was proposing. No one was when the whole thing happened with Trump and the documents in Mar-a-Lago. I mean, that was one thing. I don't think anyone serious was suspecting that there were files about UFOs, in those boxes. It's just, it defies common sense and logic to
that
believe.
It's being presented in this form in a congressional hearing. Like you would, if this was a report in ProPublica, then it'd be like, oh, well, like that's
like
kind
a real
of where
leak.
this leaks. Yeah, like these leaked things, and then they're leaking actual evidence with it and so forth. But if this is a Pentagon hearing, or excuse me, a congressional hearing in the House, it's like, well, hold up, like this sounds more like a distraction, But go ahead.
Let me give you a couple, because before I get this side, since we're on this, I was going to go in this direction anyway, but I'll go now because we're on it, which is just, I was reading, I'm looking here at some of the quotes. So there's a gentleman that was one of the guys testifying, Mr. Gallaudet, says, I'll quote here the article. He described an email he received when he was serving as U.S. Navy's chief meteorologist. The email warned about multiple midair collisions and attached a now declassified video of a UAP captured by an F-18 aircraft. I'm thinking, like, hold on. The Congress brought a guy to testify to the American people that didn't see anything himself. He got an email about potentially midair collisions. So he's testifying about an email he read. This goes back to, like, when we see, this is why I'm saying the PSYOP, this is coordinated. When we see certain publications or cable news outlets acting like something that was posted on Twitter is a fact. That social media has been a source
by virtue of it being posted on
correct.
Twitter. Like, because
that's my point.
Twitter.
So someone who calls himself a journalist, who is supposed to investigate things and make sure that, they've accounted for certain ways that information has been presented to them, is stating to their viewers or the American people that it's fact just because it was posted on social media. And here we have the U.S. Congress bringing someone to testify about something very, very serious. And this person is telling us that they got an email about it, and the other piece of information is something that's already been declassified for years. So that's one. The next one was a gentleman who said he couldn't say that much because he couldn't talk any further because the information was classified. So I was like, okay, so he did his job. There's another guy, Mr. Elizondo. It says, Elizondo's concern related to national security, resting on the fact that much of the reported UAP activity has been around military bases and nuclear weapon sites. I'm thinking that goes back to what we just said, is that, the military does experiments, and then they want to deflect people who might have seen them in the sky and say, oh, yeah, that was a UFO. It's just... So I mean, this is kind of, this is where we get, and the allusion to kind of a Marvel movie and so forth was intentional, but this is where we get to that world of amusing ourselves to death. Governance and governing, by and large, is boring if you're doing the things that, making sure the trains run on time. And that's kind of a euphemism. But the point being is that, okay, well, is there anything else that maybe Congress should be, the House should be looking at or doing, any analysis, whether it's working on bills or not or whatever? Now, in many respects, since, lobbying and kind of the way Congress is bought and sold, maybe we want them doing this kind of stuff, because whenever they get to be being constructive, it's serving some, interest of some moneyed interest that's lobbying them. But at least this is harmless relatively. Well, we might be learning that there's a UFO lobby. Apparently, that there's the Andromeda Galaxy is occupied with beings that had to come all the way to Earth to lobby the U.S. government for money. That's exactly what's happening.
Or influence or something. And this is their lobby that's putting this information out there. But it's almost like our government in many respects. It's the people that are in the government, at least some of the people that are in the government, kind of go in with this, that the government kind of takes care of, the governing part takes care of itself. And you can follow all these fantastical, loose strings and so forth.
They got ChatGPT for that governing.
Exactly. But this kind of stuff gets you talked about. Hey, we're talking about it right now. And so it's like almost, this is part of the attention economy type of thing. Like, well, Congress is doing something. This is going to make it back to people, versus if they're debating, how best to bring down the national deficit, or try to start paying down the national debt and things like that. If they're debating that kind of stuff, it's not going to get talked about to the same degree. And so I wonder if this is something that's done for their own relevance. This is something they can go back and say, hey, you saw me on TV, yada, yada, yada. And again, of all the things that are done for attention, this may be among the most harmless, because a lot of times what's done for attention is fantastical and or truth adjacent, or even lies about your opponents. Like, oh, these people are, like they got a pizza restaurant, and they're doing all this crazy stuff in the basement, and like that's the kind of stuff we've seen people use for attention as well. So on part of me is wondering, is this kind of, if we're going to have clowns in the house, then maybe this is better for them to do, because this at least is kind of harmless, versus if the clowns in the house, like at least this is clowns playing in a fun house, But if we versus having the clowns with their hands on the steering wheel for real, and just kind of, so I wonder, but ultimately, I mean, it's still not a positive,
it's interesting, man, because you actually are helping me. I'm just going to get to the PSYOP now, because that segues into it. Because I think you hit on something interesting, which is, it'll be better for them to be doing this stuff than like taking an axe to actually things that could help American people. So I get it, but like you're saying, it's probably not healthy that they're talking about this stuff too, but it's better than they're just dismantling everything or whatever they would do. But
let's get rid of the FDA, or let's get rid of let's make it so companies don't have to label food products anymore. They could be doing much worse stuff.
But here's where this is why I think this is a PSYOP to bring that into play in the long run. Because this is what I don't understand about this mindset of these people that are in the majority in the Congress right now. And I don't even want to talk about political parties and all that, because this goes beyond that. This is really, these people have a different worldview about how the system is. They're paranoid as human beings, meaning, they have that personality. So they are looking at under every rock is something, like this conspiracy stuff.
And that plus they seem to be drawn to more like boring answers bore them, and it's just no, there has to be something that is kind of exciting and fantastic.
Yeah, there has to be a reason why why you're lying to me if you're telling me, like if you're some Pentagon person and you're telling me there's no real alien stuff from outer space, maybe we're working on new technologies. Because one thing that dawned on me, James, is remember in the 90s, early 2000s, most of the sightings were of triangle-shaped objects, right? Yeah. And now what do all stealth fighters look like? From the F-117 to the F-22, they all have that certain shape. And I have a client that told me, he's in his 60s, that out of MIT, he was working on the F-22 Raptor at Lockheed Martin in Skunk Works in 1981. Yeah. That saw service in 2006.
Yeah.
So, and he was already working on it, which means they probably had the blueprint started 10 years earlier in the early 70s. Yeah. So what we're seeing now is probably some stuff that the military will be using in 20 years. You know what I mean? And that's just life.
It's very boring to talk to say.
Correct.
It'll be ready in 20 years. And that's very boring. Yeah.
How much pressure do you need to have in the gas for the hydraulic thing for the flap of the wing? That's what really is the secret.
When you're operating at that kind of speed and these that many teams.
Exactly. And exactly.
All all those kind of physics.
What type of paint goes on the surface of the thing, to stop the friction of the air and heating it up, all that stuff. Yeah, that's boring. And it's not as sexy as James Bond, and what we see in the movies. So, but the PSYOP, here's my concern, James, on the real PSYOP, is that this is another example, because there is nothing there, that they are laying the groundwork for the desire that we know is coming, and when the administration changes, to purge the federal government of actual federal employees who got there through meritocracy and through
expertise. Something. Well, that was the Project 2025 thing. Is get
correct. That's my point.
Out, bring in loyalty and partisanship. Yeah,
correct. Because remember, we've seen this already just in this recent years. The most vocal people in our society are going to be the conspiracists, right? Think about the big lie. Trump won the election partially because the people who want to believe in these things are much louder than people like me and you. You and I aren't going to take to the street about the Congress having this hearing. But if the Congress can gin enough people up in our society, even if it's only 10 or 20%, to be very vocal that when Trump gets in, he needs to purge the deep state, and he needs to purge the Pentagon and these agencies of these nefarious people who are hiding all this information about UFOs and all this danger because of things like you said, all this waste in the government. And think about what the Doge, Elon Musk group is going to do. They're going to be in there telling us that we got to get rid of people at NASA, and we got to get rid of the
Yeah, we just
contractors
got to
at
hire
Boeing.
the people at SpaceX.
Yeah,
Or
SpaceX.
just
Yeah,
pay
because
SpaceX.
is
You
going
don't
to be.
need NASA
Yeah,
anymore. Yeah.
and that's what I'm saying. That's why I say this is a psyop to just continue to dismantle the administrative state. It's everything they've told us they want to do, but this is how you do it. You fracture the country and get the loud vocal people to intimidate the people like me and you that would otherwise not want to fight about UFOs. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that, and you say PSYOP, and that brings in, like baggage with it. But I mean, it's manipulation.
It may not be
regardless.
It may not be that the Congress
psychological operation. It's an activity that it's meant to influence people. Like with information. And again, information can be true or false. Information is information. It's agnostic as to how truthful it is. So it's psychological operations. They're used domestically. They're used in foreign, places, but they're meant to influence people. That goes back to when we did the show talking about Denzel's comments about how people are all being manipulated. I mean, and so yes, there is that. And so I think, but when people use the PSYOP, it's like, oh, well, is this like a military or intelligence operation?
Yeah, I don't mean it that way. Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know where it's coming from.
That's a good point.
It's definitely something. It's meant to it's meant for something. Like it seems very random to be dropped in that sense. Now, why and whose purposes it serves? Again, that stuff we'll see as you were kind of throwing out some examples at when the other shoe drops. Like when this type of information creates a sentiment to get rid of NASA and just give all the NASA's budget to Elon Musk, who owns SpaceX, who happens to make the decision to do that.
And
then we'll be like, oh, okay, we get it.
And who and openly spent hundreds of millions of dollars buying his way into the White House, right? Like this is an investment for him.
The administration. Yeah.
So he wants a return on his investment.
Exactly. And so then we'll see, okay, well, yeah, this was laying the groundwork for that. But to me, like when I look at the way the PSYOP term gets used, I think it's one of those things. It's meant to tickle that kind of, hey, something's happening without even though it may be just kind of normal. And this goes back to normal being people are always trying to influence and manipulate people. Like people do that in their personal lives. Like people do that all the time. But I'll say this, like the PSYOP thing is also very appealing to the person who's looking for fantastical explanations. Like I saw recently, and I know we want to get at it, we get off this topic in a second, but I did want to throw this up. Once that term came up, is I saw recently that like Joe Rogan is out there saying, for example, the reason why a lot of people don't like Trump is because of a PSYOP. And which was very interesting to me because for anybody who's been in the public eye for 40 years, you're going to have people that don't like you and people that do like you. Like that's kind of the nature of, like, the quarterback for any football team who if they've been around long enough, is going to have detractors and they're going to have supporters. Like, so like Trump of all people, like if you have somebody who just comes on the scene and then is very much unliked very quickly, that's going to be that's going to be the result of a PSYOP more likely because you haven't been there and done enough things for people to really dislike you that much, versus somebody, if you've been there, like people could dislike Donald Trump because of the way he acted with the Central Park Five. People could dislike Donald Trump because something he did in 1995 or 2000 or so it was really bizarre to me to try to say, hey, this guy that's been in the public eye for so long, it's because of a PSYOP. But again, that will for anyone who has this kind of conspiratory, who's drawn to these kind of conspiratorial answers versus kind of just stand. Again, it's pretty boring to point out that if you've been in the public eye and doing, bombastic things for a long time, you're going to make some friends and you're going to make some enemies, And is it a PSYOP that people in the boxing world like Donald Trump? Well, no, because he was part of the boxing world and hosting fights for a long time. So again, all of these things that have explanations that aren't very sexy and aren't very, did you hear this? Like kind of thing. Then like they get pushed to the wayside a lot of times for people who want fantastical explanations. And I think that the UFO thing is that as well. Like it's not that the government's working on these things. They're always working, as you pointed out, they're always working on things when it's advanced in technology. They're working on stuff decades in advance. Then it's like, oh, no, we actually are harvesting UFOs or UAPs. And I don't have any evidence of this, but I got an email. So we end up in these kind of situations. And again, it may be relatively harmless, but we'll see, because again, the right person might be able to use this kind of sentiment or this kind of information to further manipulate the public to more direct ends that benefit them and or harm the public.
Yeah, and I think it's a great point you bring up Rogan, and not to get off topic, but it's more like as you said it, I'm thinking in my head, yeah, Rogan could be doing a psyop too. Like it's that kind of stuff comes from everywhere, right? So, but I just want to finish because I know we want to jump with this because I think this is where, and anyone watching us still, that's what I'll say. Thank you, our audience, because I'm going to assume that if you made it this far in, you're similar to the mindset of James and I. Whereas, more intellectual, you're curious, you're also willing to challenge your own beliefs and look at things from different angles and all that. And we all have confirmation bias, but at least you can try and recognize it in yourself. And what I'm saying is, I've learned a lot watching this whole drama play out in our society, in our culture in the last decade. And I just feel like this is the stuff that I used to laugh at. You know what I mean? Like I would see the Congress doing this and these people with this mentality in the Congress and the people that believe in QAnon. And I would just take it as a joke and call them idiots in my head and really just think of it as, these people are. But that's what I'm saying. Like I now look at it different. This is dangerous. All of us have to take this serious. And for those of us that don't believe in this stuff, we can't just laugh it off anymore, like the Haitians eating pets and all that. It's effective. And you make a great point. Information and truth don't have to be the same thing, but information will always win. So if we see
information can be used for a lot of different reasons. It could be used to convey truth, or it can be used to manipulate, perform psyops or just general manipulation.
But that's what I'm saying.
I went to this place, but I really went to another place. Parents do that, or kids do that to their parents all the time. That's information. It's not necessarily truth, but
no. But that's why that's why I just want to finish with this serious thought, because the way we came to this discussion was telling James that my 26-year-old son was telling me that he saw, the clips of his hearings on TikTok. And so I realized in that moment that I can either tell my son, it's BS and just walk out of the room, but then that leaves his mind still in a vacuum that's open to receiving BS. So I sat him down and said some of the similar things I said on this discussion about how the military did in the 50s and 60s and the research and all this. And he left the conversation armed with in a different way to look at this stuff. So that's all I just wanted to share with anyone still with us, is that you probably got the same mindset as us, and we need to stop laughing this stuff off. We just need to take it serious.
Assuming that people walk away understanding that, again, whether you can outright dismiss it, or you can at least point and say, look, well, for me to embrace that, I need more, back to back it up. I'm not automatically going to be drawn to any alternative explanation just because it's an alternative explanation, or just because it's very entertaining, so that's kind of the thing. So, but yeah, we definitely appreciate, everybody for joining us. Anybody who's still here, subscribe to the podcast, rate it, review it, tell us what you think. And please join us for part 2 as well. And we'll talk to you soon.